So please give Adam and his gang a big applause. It's because of them that we're together today. And now I have transitions. So let's start. Perhaps always people say, Doug has this weird thing on my machine now, so I can't see anything. Aha! He has notes he's been preparing, which I have, of course. So this is the number of active Umbraco sites right now, over 250,000. It's insane. And it only gets worse. So this is the number of new Umbraco installs in the UK this year. So more than 25,000 new installs in England alone. Great Britain, I don't know. Cockworks. Another thing, did you know that a year ago was when we had 45 minutes. A year ago was the last UK festival. It's exactly a year ago. A year ago was exactly when we released version 7. So since a year ago, there's been over 120,000 installs of V7, which is kind of nuts. You know, we go there. We have this reporting system. Then we go there every week or every month, and we're like, maybe, how many is it? And every time we get surprised. It's crazy. Just look at this island. United Kingdom. This was the last 24 hours. This is the last week, and this is the last month of Umbraco installs. It is pretty crazy. There's an install of Umbraco in United Kingdom every 8 minutes. So that might not sound like a lot, but it actually means that there's a new install faster than Balotelli can put on a bib. If you, that is my main matrix for everything in life. There's more numbers. We've been busy, not just in the HQ, but also in the community and in the core team as a whole. We've done 17 releases this year, including patch releases. And we want this number to be as big as possible, so we try to create as many bugs in patch releases as possible. Because then we can do 3 releases in a week, and this sounds really good. But a better number is that we fixed more than 700 bugs this year. So sometimes people are like, yeah, you're too focused on new features. But actually, every time we create a new feature, we fix 15 bugs. And that's even if a feature is just a tiny thing in the core. So a lot of great progress and growth and all that. That's good. Last year, I talked about 2 things. I talked about the product, the Umbraco core, and then I talked about running projects in a smoother way. I showed some early demos of Umbraco as a service. That thing is something we're still working on. I don't know if we're ever going to ship it out of beta, but at least we have 500 projects running on it, and we're learning a lot. Learning a lot about improving the core. So we've done a lot of improvements to the core the last year to make it run faster. We've done a lot to the infrastructure from Umbraco as a service. We've done a lot on team organization. It's a pretty insane project. It's like, you know, when you have kids or get married, if you knew what you had gone into, you would never. But then when you're in it, it's kind of nice. So thank God we didn't know what we started when we did Umbraco as a service. It will come eventually, and we're constantly adding new projects on Umbraco as a service. All this wouldn't have been possible. All these improvements to the core wouldn't have been possible without the Gold partners. We have now more than 30 Gold partners who actually last year financed 58% of the core work. So that's up from 45% last year. So we've been able to add more and more resources to the core thanks to this. The UK is the country with the most Gold partners, so thank you very much for that. And if you rely on Umbraco, and if you want Umbraco to be better and better, and don't have time to do pull requests and all that, you could also become a Gold partner and help us add more resources to it. So that would be, if you think about it, and if you've been considering it, do it strongly. It makes a huge difference. It's pretty cool. Some other things that's also happened over the last year. We've grown as a company. Just since summer, we added 4 new people to the team. And now we actually enough people so we can do other things than just work on the core. We can do stuff like better documentation, which is something you'll see. And actually, even before we release something, we've documented now. Like for real. We've also done totally crazy things like usability testing. Whoa, testing your software before we release it. And that's one of the reasons why we wanted a new office where we could do stuff like that. Some people call Umbraco a cult, and that's why I'm proud that we're using a lot of money to have a temple. It's but it's an open temple where you can go and get shaved and put on orange clothes and play a tambourine. But that's in the basement. In the main rooms that people can see, we do usability testing. We also, it's an open office, so people are welcome anytime. And we're doing improvised meetups as well. So recently we actually asked anyone with a couple of days notice, say, drop by and help us test, do further testing on the new grid feature. And 7 people came by and we had lots of input. And you really get lots of input virtually and through the bug tracker, etc. But also in person does a huge difference. And earlier we've been, it's been a project to do stuff like that. We had to find a venue, had to set it up, had to move people there. Now it's really easy to just say, hey, drop by. Of course, it's easy for us. For people in London, it's semi-complex. Actually, extremely complex, but cheap if you fly Ryan. We know. Anyway, some more interesting stuff we've been working on is, of course, Umbraco 7.2, which is very close. There's sort of 3 main things we've been doing. Some of it has been on the implementation side of things, where we added a query builder and we added compositions to make it more flexible and easier to build Umbraco sites. Then for editors, there's been a lot of improvements to the list view, especially thanks to the work of Andy Butman. So if he's here, I need to give him a big hug. And then we also added sort of a responsive preview, so you can press the preview button and you can have small icons of devices and you can add devices and people can see how it looks. And then, of course, the main feature in 7.2 is the grid. So let me just do some quick demos because we are way behind schedule. But we need a couple of demos, else it's not fun. So let me just gather the displays here. And let's have a demo here. So just the fantastic starter kit by Kevin Jump. So pretty much a vanilla installation. Let's start with the query builder. So let's say I have this page and I would love in my navigation to have all the pages of type landing page underneath. If it was my first time with Umbraco, a lot of people have been struggling with writing these razor queries. And one of the things we tried with 7.2 is make it easier to do stuff like that. So let's just take a look at this feature. There's now a small button, which is actually an icon from Umbraco version 1. I didn't know it was still there, but it would be sort of a shame to change it. It actually, it's so ugly, it looks like something from Psycho. I didn't say that, but it's true. So I want all landing pages from, and then I can say from this page, and then I actually see in real time the result and how fast it is, and I can do where clauses, and I can change the sort ordering, etc. And then when I click insert, it actually generates some example code for me. And even if this isn't something I would end up using in production, it's actually quite helpful to learn how to write queries. So it's relatively simple right now, but it could be fun to make it more advanced. So if you have ideas, bring them. Another thing is composition. So you've always been able to do these long trees of inherited document types, but maybe you more want to have it there was once a package called mixins where you could sort of mix document types. That's now built in. So if you create a new document type, then you can now mix and match from existing document types, as long as they don't rely on anything else. So if you, for instance, here, if I had like content and SEO and metadata and yada yada yada, I would just choose them here without having a weird, a deep inheritance tree. So that's also pretty nice. For those who've used the betas of version 7, you will notice that we restricted the level of composition you can do. So now you can only make a composition of nodes that doesn't have parents, because else you could end in a pretty weird state where it was really difficult to get an overview of how your doc type was built. So we restricted it that way. List view improvements. How many here are familiar with list views in version 7? Okay, about half. So a common thing in Umbraco was you had these really deep trees with a lot of content. Then people started doing a lot of hacks like date folders or alphabet folders. So you had smaller trees, which made it even harder for editors to navigate. So in 7, we added this feature of a list view, so you can flag a document type saying this is a list view, and then children won't appear in the tree, but instead in a nice list view here, which was great, except if you wanted to use a content picker, then you couldn't pick any items because it would only show the tree. We fixed that, so now you can actually search in items in a list view. There's more improvements to it, and maybe I have time to cover some of it as well. And then finally, sort of the main improvement. Well, the other improvement I talked about was this responsive preview. So now, if you preview a page, it shows a nice panel eventually. I guess my Umbraco installation is just booting now. Oh, it's loading fonts. So I can't show it because I'm not online. So forget about that. Imagine there's a beautiful preview. Try it yourself. It only takes 45 seconds to install version 7 now. Okay, but another cool thing in 7 is the grid, which is the way you should use. This should be your new rich text editor for any site. If you are using 7.2 and you have a rich text editor, I will find you. But I'm a nice guy, so I'm going to give you a hug and an instruction on how to use grid. So the idea with grids is that people use the rich text editor for a lot of stuff today that was never meant to, like inserting images and making crazy layouts, which is awful. It's a pretty awful editor experience. It's usually not doing anything good for the design of the site, and especially if you have a responsive adaptive site, then things start to get really messy because it's nowhere near semantic, the markup that comes out of that. So the idea with the grid was, one, to replace the scenarios where you had advanced layouts, such as long reach, the trend where you have beautiful laid out articles with wide images, then text, then a quote, and etc. Or the scenarios where you have widgets, for instance. So where you can place arbitrary number of components in parts of your site. Where people use all sorts of weird tricks with multi-node tree picker, etc. Bad editor experience. So the grid is inspired by grid systems, obviously, such as responsive, foundation, bootstrap, and you can completely customize the grid. And the way it works is that you can add a number of layouts. So in this case, I have two types of layouts. One that's just one big area, and one where I have a sidebar already defined. So let's just take this one. Then inside a layout, I can start add rows. So in this case, I have a headline row, which is just one big, one wide field. And I can, for instance, add something here. And then I have more of an article type of layout where I have two columns, and in here I can select an image, and I can, in here I could add some rich text, ironically enough. But you get the idea. You can sort of build it up, and this thing is insanely configurable. And I wish we had time in the keynote to actually go through it. But by the end of today, Per and Rune have a really, really cool session on how powerful the grid is. And if you're not seeing that session, you're really, really, really missing out. So you should all go check out that session. It's probably the most important feature in Umbraco in recent times. So make sure you're going to master that one. And then I talked a little bit about this thing that we opened up the HQ, and it it really has already influenced version 7.2. I mentioned we did this meetup, but we also went out to partners and showed early versions of the grid, and we got their feedback. We held these usability tests in our lab, both for editors and for developers, which made some UX improvements already. And again, we had people coming over, and we could look over their shoulder and see how they were trying to use the grid and if our documentation made sense. So that's something we want to do moving forward, to make sure that when we actually ship a version, it's of much higher quality than all it needs to learn. The version needs to learn before it ships. In terms of 7.2. We are aiming at a release candidate next week. If we have no surprises, there's going to be a release candidate next week. There's already sites in production that's been using the alpha, which is, of course, something we won't recommend but love. So, summary: don't miss Per's and Rune's session. That's quite crucial. Then one of my favorite topics the last couple of years is on simplicity, and I keep talking about how we try to make Umbraco a really simple piece of software. But we can only do it so far. The end experience for customers solely rely on how you do our work. And at our office, we recently we ordered some amazing chairs. I love furniture, so we spent we got these fantastic height adjustable chairs. There's a lot of innovation in those tables. Not high adjustable chairs, high adjustable tables, standing tables, whatever it's called. You don't think about that there's a lot of innovation going on in a table, but there is. This company, they were so busy that they had to hire a contractor to come and assemble these tables. And these people, they weren't that experienced, so they assembled them in a really wrong way. So they didn't work all that well. They started, going up by themselves, which is kind of cool because then you actually use the functionality. The only problem is it's not kind of comfy to do like this. They made weird noises. They had scratches, and I was furious. I was like really pissed off. But then I thought, hey, so I've been spending so much time trying to, teach our team that Umbraco is never better than how it's implemented. So it's crucial that we make sure the features are easy to use and understand. We document them, etc., etc. And this was a prime example, right? We had ordered some amazing tables, but the moment we got them, they were shit. And And that's the same experience that some people have of Umbraco, either because it's done by unexperienced people or by people who have maybe giving too low budgets, not enough time to do proper TLC, or just do things as they used to do and don't follow the progress of the core. And I just have some few examples that I would love to show of this. It's very basic stuff, so nothing fancy at all. At the HQ, we have a football team called Umbraco Unicorns. We have some really cool shirts, and that's all that matters, right? We suck at football, so you're always welcome to challenge us. And of course, and there's some Americans here. It's the type of football where you use your feet. I love America. Did you know that there's a international standards day? No, a day where you celebrate standards, and it's it was about 2 months ago. It's everywhere. It's the same date, except in the United States. It's 6 days later. It's true. Look at how it's. Anyway. So this is a pretty cool site. You can, go look at the different players, and if I was online, I would have a really cool radar chart here with how fast Simon is, etc. And of course, we can configure this, and eventually we're going to ship this as a starter kit, just for inspiration on how to build things. And this is a great example of a an implementation that's done fast. So basically, these are all the stats of a player, and they go from 0 to 100. But how would an editor know? You told them, hey, just put in a number from 0 to 100. So this is bad. Then we could do it slightly better, which is when people add small descriptions. So people would go for speed, type in a number, Oh, even better to use validation, but anyway. So now, the editor have a chance to know exactly what they should enter. But it can be done better, because, a number from 0 to 100, use a slider. You say, oh, but there is no slider. Because what you do is, you look at this one and you say slider, nah, no slider. And this is actually a design flaw in Umbraco, and it's something we can't do something about right now. When you have to configure a property editor and the controls that the editors use to edit things, that's called property editors, when you need to configure them, you can't do it in this interface. One day you should. But until then there are different types of property editors that require configurations. And that's why they don't appear in this list. Early on, the image cropper didn't appear because it had to be configured as well. So one thing you should make sure is that you, every now and then, you go check this one out and see this is the list of property editors that you can configure. So you can make variants of a property editor. So for instance, we can make a slider. We're just going to make this stats. And we can just say minimum value 1, whoops, and maximum value 100. And it should be horizontal. And we can save this one, and then we can go back to our document type and change the type. So I'm just going to do it on 1, like this. And then whenever editors are going to enter these stats, it's a much easier way for them to do, and they can make fewer mistakes. So make sure, I would love that all this was easier to discover, but make sure every now and then when you're playing with a new install that you go to the data type section and sort of play with some of the built-in functionality. I also mentioned the list view. I'm going to come back to that one. But here's another example. Because here we have our team. This is, we have a goalkeeper, we have 2 forwards. In fact, we pretty much have 6 forwards because we're pretty inspired by Manchester United. Not same budget, so more goal partners, please. But that should be configured as well, because sometimes we discover new talents of a player, and he should be the goalie instead. So a typical way to do this is we just have a multi-node tree picker, because that's cool, because then we can just refer and automatically get stats. And then we would sort of say the first one is going to be the goalie, the last one is going to be the forward. And you can just pick players, and we can limit the number of players, and we can sort them. But hey, let's be honest, this is a pretty crappy editor experience, right? So one of the things we really have been working hard on, and every time we come out, we mention this, in 7, it's so easy to create your own editor experiences. And I'm going to do an example now, which is sort of a bad example, because it's awful design, and I'm exaggerating, but hopefully you will get the point. So what I want is something like this. So this is just running on my local Mac. It's just a Python web server, and it's just some really simple HTML. In fact, it's not simple because I made it, so it's pretty bad HTML. But anyway, the idea is, we have some different fields, and we should be able to click on them and select the player. That would be pretty cool. Actually, and I shouldn't be doing this because we are over time, but look at this. Playing Football Manager in the inspector. So we're going to do this, and we're going to say this one. So, sorry. Anyway, we want to put this one and replace this one as the way you edit our lineup. So what we're going to do is we're going to add a property editor. And the way, how many have tried to make their own property editor? Okay, not enough. So the only thing you need to make a property editor is you make a folder in app plugins. I call this Unicorn Editor. You add a manifest. I'm just going to bump up the font size here. Whoops. There we go. So what I'm doing here is I'm referring some JavaScript, in this case a controller. I'm going to get back to that because this is an advanced property editor. Then I'm going to say it's a property editor. And this is the alias. This is what it's called. And this is my view, and it's just an HTML file. So let's go take a look at that HTML file. And it's just my HTML. And because it's hard-coded, the way it works is I have a little bit of Angular here, but it's really not that much, to sort of make sure that you get the CSS you want, and you're going to see in a minute how that works. And then I tie everything together with my controller here, which is, again, not a lot of code. So if we look at it, the first thing I do when I've defined my controller, and there's a ton of examples for this, is I load my CSS. Then I need to have sort of a model for my data, because I have a goalie, I have wings, I have a midfield, I have 2 forwards. So I say if that's not already defined, then I'm just going to define it as a JavaScript object. So this isn't that advanced. I just have a property called goalie, which is an object. I have a left wing, which is an object, etc. Then I have a method called addPlayer, and I pass the position of the player, which means that in my view, whenever I click one of these shirts, it's just going to say, add the player at this position. And then I use the built-in dialog service to open up a content picker. And when someone clicks that content picker, I say, oh, the ID of that position should be the ID of the node. The name of that position should be the name of the node. And then, because this is enterprise, and it should be shared because you should all have football teams because it's so much fun, and you're all going to use this, then I made sure that we don't hard code the start node of my editor. So I made a pre-value editor for that as well. So you can configure where should you pick your players from. Maybe you have multiple teams. We support that. Amazing starter kit. Anyway, so once I've done this, I'm pretty much done. So I have this functionality now. Ooh la la. So let's just play with it. I want to change this position. I click this one, and I can pick someone else. And of course, it's sort of a crappy example, but this took like, I don't know, an hour to build. And if it was better designed, then it would be a really cool editor experience. And just to emphasize what it takes to make it reusable with a configurable start node, then the only thing I had to do was in my manifest, I say add a pre-value, which is, where are you going to take players from? Give it a key and a type. So this is the type of tree picker. So if I want multiple teams, I can configure another squad picker. Let's see if it's this one. Yep. And then I have a node picker here, and I can say, take players from this folder instead. So it's really easy to create these custom editor experiences. And no C#, I did it all in Sublime. It's just using HTML and JavaScript. So make sure really that you play with it. And there's a lot of documentation for this as well. The last thing I mentioned was this list view. So of course, as the company grows, the list of players will grow, so it's unmanageable. And perhaps in 2 years, the tree will crash. So we need to do something about that. And luckily, we can just say that this document type should be a list view. We saw that before. So if I refresh this one now, oops, like this, we can see that it's a list view, which is kind of nice, except that this is sort of crappy information. I don't need to know when the player was created. I don't need who created it. I don't need the sort order. I want something else. And luckily, there was a pull request that enabled this in version 7.2. So now, in my folder, whenever I made a list view, I can create a custom one. So let's try that. And I can say, rather than these items that doesn't make any sense, I would love to, show the speed of my team, because that's much better. How fast? Like this. And I can change the sort order, etc. So now if I go back, look at my list view, I get this information instead. So again, it's really possible to tailor the editor experience in version 7.2 with these improvements. And again, the picker, now I can search for players whenever I use the built-in picker. So let's just go back here. I'm almost done. But just to sum it all up, making a good Umbraco implementation is eventually all about the editor experience. Every time you do an hour of work, they probably will do 100 or 200 hours of work. So, make the effort and make sure to tell them why it's important that the, spend budget on stuff like this. Then also make sure you always check out the new features in Umbraco. Make sure you follow the blog, so we blog about the new features and you discover them. And make sure to always tailor Umbraco. It's what it's made for, but tailor it using the built-in functionality. It's so easy to create custom small experiences that we really don't need to go back to the habit of version 4 and 6, where we had these monster packages that was huge, had a lot of functionality, was almost tiny CMSs in themselves, because it was so difficult to create property editors in 6. So they just grew with features. And even though the idea of some of these property editors or packages were good, some of them have grown too complex and doesn't bring a better editor experience than you could create yourself in a pretty easy way. So with that, finally, let's talk a little bit about the roadmap we're done in a couple of minutes. Up until recently, we've had a really good roadmap. After V5, we took a lot of effort in making sure we had an updated roadmap. And sort of with version 7, we were done. Everything we wanted when we canceled version 5, we've accomplished. And 7.2 sort of marks the end of that era, which also means that if you go look at the roadmap right now, it looks like this. It's just, you have no idea what's going on. So one of the things we are working on right now is making sure that we get back to the glorious days of a beautiful roadmap. Very beautiful roadmap. The idea of what we want to do is, well, we have a lot of ideas, but you're the ones who are actually using our product for clients. We don't do any client work. So we need to combine your knowledge with our knowledge in order to have a relevant Umbraco in the future as well. what we want to do is, for now, we just want to make sure that we take it easy a little bit. We want a better, sort of a better now. So we're going to ship 7.2, and then we're going to do a lot of polish over the next period of time on that one. This is likely not going to be a 7.3, even though it's in the bug tracker. It's just a sort of a placement right now for items. So we want to focus on making sure that you have a great Umbraco. It has a ton of great features. Now we just want to make it sure that it becomes the most stable version of Umbraco ever. So that's our primary goal for the near future. Then, in parallel with that, we want to do some cleanup. There's a lot of redundant code in Umbraco right now because some of my legacy code is still there, so we don't break backwards compatibility. But my colleagues have made almost a copy of that functionality into much more beautiful and more efficient code, which the core uses internally now. Which means that we can soon get rid of the old legacy code, the weird namespaces, etc. But it will take some more work, and it will also mean that we're going to break backwards compatibility once again. So it's something we need to do, and it's something we want to do in parallel with a great, stable version of Umbraco. In addition to that, we've learned a lot. The version 7 UI is now 2 years old. We've learned a lot in that period of time, and we want to improve that. So, as I said, in parallel with the better now, we want to make a cleaner core that uses fewer resources and are more efficient and easier to contribute to, and at the same time have an updated UX. Then looking much further ahead, there's a lot of stuff we want to do. At Code Garden, we showed a demo of segments and variants in Umbraco. You could create variants of pages. You could make sure that depending on what people did on your site, you could put them into different segments, and you could serve variants to segments, etc. Really exciting feature. There's also we have the idea of swapping out the current cache. The current cache in Umbraco is based on XML. It doesn't make a lot of sense anymore because Umbraco is no longer a pure hierarchical CMS. So we want to replace it with a Lucene examine-based NoSQL type of cache, where we can also add queries instead. So searches instead of queries. So imagine that you can use the back office to create a search. You can save that search, give it an alias, and in your template you can just query for that search, and that will generate your data structure. So that's exciting as well. We also have this idea of the next version of Examine. Can already do facets. It can also do geo-indexing. So imagine you put a Google map. You have a Google map on your content. Then you will be able to query Umbraco, say, give me all content within 100 miles of this point. And once we have all that, then we can suddenly also make Umbraco less of just a web CMS, but also more of a data store. Especially if on top of that we add a nice, easy-to-use REST API for both querying but also CRUD operation, add OAuth as a part of the core, and then you can actually use Umbraco as a really simple way to create, easy and fast way to create apps as well. And then finally, another thing we could do is Microsoft last week announced the next version of ASP.NET. It's going to be called ASP.NET version 5. It could have been called ASP.NET version 600 because it has very little to do with ASP.NET version 4. We've been working closely with Microsoft for almost half a year, but intensively the last couple of months on how Umbraco could use the next version of ASP.NET. But it's important to understand that it's a complete rewrite. It would be as big of a task for us to create Umbraco in the next version of ASP.NET as if we swapped to Node, for instance. It's a massive, massive change. The good part of it is that it's also a much nicer change. It's way faster, uses less resources, and also it works cross-platform. So you'd actually be able to run Umbraco natively on a Mac without installing any VMs and that is where web developers are. So the point is, we have a lot of opportunities ahead for us. There's a lot of nice possibilities, but we also can't do all this at once. So we need your help to prioritize these things, both in terms of what you need right now, what you would need yet next year, and what will be cool in the future. And the only way we can do that is by, as I said, work together. So I'm going to ask you of one thing. I asked Adam to send out a form saying, hey, we're going to be here at the UK Festival. We want to talk to you one-on-one. Let us know what you need. And I think I got 3 replies. I really, really hope more of you will go in, fill out that questionnaire, and talk to us throughout the event, because it's really your way to influence the roadmap. And so if you don't, you can't complain. How about that? Another thing we're going to do is we're going to talk to all our Go partners, make sure that we hear their priorities. So that's a great way to get feedback from a large range of different types of agencies. And once we're done with this, then hopefully next quarter, we're going to be able to have a new roadmap up, public, always up to date, like in the old days. We're going to publish our sprint minutes. So when we do internal sprints in the HQ, we're going to make the minutes public. And we're also going to do regular hangouts on air, so people can get in touch. And hopefully that way we can combine a pretty great pace on the Umbraco core, all while having it transparent in the future. So to sum it all up, as always, I had the same slide last year. I thought, hey, I'm going to use it again. Because there's still never been a better time to be in the Umbraco community. We still see an insane growth rate. I still think we have a great time. We stick to our roots. And I think, at least in our team, we are still insanely hungry for improving Umbraco, and we are still not afraid of doing stuff that we may not shouldn't do. But we don't have investors except for you. So we can do pretty much whatever is in the interest of the ecosystem, which is what makes up Umbraco. Umbraco is half a product, half an ecosystem, and it should always stay that way. And with that, as always, just keep share simplicity and make sure you have a lot of fun here at the UK Festival. Thank you very much.